Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about being prepared. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, a question over here. What learning strategy a self-taught can follow to master in-demand skills and actually be qualified to work as a software developer? There's a ton of boot camps and courses that promises the world out there. How can a self-taught how can how a self-taught can study and build products that will get them hired. I'm self-taught and often feel confused and lack confidence in what I do and learn. You often talk about people who get into it but lack the necessary knowledge and fundamentals. How do you make sure not to be one of them? It's very simple and it's very complicated at the same time. Let me just finish this once and for all. It's probably not going to be the last video I make on it because this is like one of the core questions for people who want to get into the industry. Guys, the thing you have to do in order to be a software developer is to know how to use one stack that fairly accurately reflects the daily work and commonly used tools that a software developer is using. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now, the problem with that is that the range of combinations that can entail is pretty hefty. The range of tools that you have to know can vary a lot depending on the language you pick, on if you're front-end, back-end, if you're ops, and so forth and so forth. It varies from company to company as well, which is why what I tell people is that when I talk about people lacking like the necessary basic skills, it has to do with usually that the individual is what they call themselves mid-levels, they call themselves seniors, etc., etc. But the reality is that they really only know one stack, and most of the time they don't actually know it all that well. Most companies need individuals who have the ability to not just adopt a specific set, because there's no way on average an inexperienced software developer who has literally done one project or one archetype of project forever and just knows one set of tools is going to have the necessary skills or to just seamlessly transition into something else unless they have these fundamentals. Basically what I'm talking about here is that if you go to any company, it is very unlikely that all the tools and the work environment and so forth is going to be identical. A lot of it is going to be overlapped, a lot of things are going to be very similar, but you need to have this necessary skills in order to adapt. As a junior software developer, it's more forgivable that you may not know all the tools and differences because you're expected to not know as much as everybody else. But if you're a senior software developer, and guys, I have interviewed so many seniors now that fail the junior code test. And the junior code test is like these are so-called front-end, in this case it was front-end developers, front-end seniors who can't make a basic carousel and can't follow a design specification and actually make it look like the thing, or can't produce a mobile responsive layout. That's not a senior, that's a joke in our industry, because this is the sort of thing, this is like daily stuff that you do as a software developer. Even the juniors do this on a daily basis. So if you call yourself a senior and you can't make that happen, then by my definition, that you're not a senior. You're barely a junior level software developer in my opinion. And this is what I'm talking about, guys. It's very difficult for me, as I've said before, to explain to you all the things that you have to know, because the bootcamps, as I've told you before, guys, the bootcamps will tell you how a specific tool works. Or if you're lucky, they will be made by people who actually know the industry, and they will tell you, sort of the set of tools that you will need. But there is a reason why most of the education that you find for people who want to be software developers is a bit longer. In many cases, not always. Front-end is a special sort of beast in this sort of situation, in my opinion at the very least. But as I've said, guys, the average time range people want to see in a CV is 1 to 5 years. There's a reason for that, because you're not going to master the entire ecosystem of things that you might potentially have to know in less time than that. It's probably not going to happen in that time either. Guys, most of the people who, I'll tell you a secret, most of the people who have been working for 4 years are just barely good enough. And some of them are really, really good, but most of them are just barely good enough to like be productive. They can handle a task on their own, but it's usually going to take a lot longer. It's usually not going to be at the sort of level you might expect from a real senior. The seniors are usually, as I said, like the differences, guys, of a true senior and someone who's been working for a few years is like enormous, depending on the person you're dealing with. And it's not just about speed and performance that these things sort of show themselves. It has to do with overall comfort. Well, that sort of ties into the speed and performance in a sense as well. But the comfort you feel when you work in the ecosystem. So for you to to get a learning strategy, I've said this before, you guys, the best way for you to do that is to talk to software developers on that work at a company that you might find interesting, or if like you can check the job postings or so forth and so forth, and look at the actual tools that they are using. Just reach out to them and tell them what stack is your, what tools are you using, and then just learn that specific stack and try to figure out what is it that they are doing on a daily basis. Because I can tell you things like it depends on the roles, as I was saying. In many cases, guys, depending on the company, you might have to you have different levels of requirements. Some companies use one stack in a surrounding ecosystem and might give their responsibility to software developers to do DevOps on top of the work that they are doing. And these sort of things are realities that you have to sort of understand. You, as a junior, you can't learn all of this stuff. And that's why I tell people that as a junior, you should focus on what a junior level software developer is on average most expected to know, which is basically the stack, the coding language, and how to debug their own issues or like to ship something into production. But as you become more senior, or as and this is what happens in the entire industry, the requirements are just going up. And by the time you get to sort of where I am today, you literally have to know how to run the entire infrastructure on top of knowing how to deal with the entire front end area, this entire back end area. And I'm not joking now, guys. I'm saying that you get to a level where you basically need to know how to do the job of everybody. And that is just, it doesn't have to be in every company, but that is the difficulty with me explaining to you what do you need to know the basics, because it all comes down to how complicated is the work environment that you find yourself in. In one company it might be very, very simple. In another company, like where, say, the same sort of works that I've been doing, you literally have to know everything, because you like the company, that's the way that they've structured that company. So what I want you to take away from this is that the best tip I can give you to know how to, be prepared to be a software developer is, as I've said, look at the boot camps, absolutely, or if you're self-taught or if you go to university, it doesn't really matter which path you take here, because it's the same sort of deal, right? But the most important thing is to have a realistic understanding of what it means to be a software developer. What are the daily things that the software developers are using? What stacks are they using? What tasks are they usually doing? If you ask a software developer, you just reach out to them and have a meeting with them, like take a coffee with them and say, what tools do you like? Tell them, ask them about their day, like what tools are they using? How does it usually work, and so forth. And you will get a list of tools that are relevant to you, and then you try to practice with those tools. And that's the best way you can, as a junior software developer trying to break into the industry, that's probably the best thing you can do, because that is the closest that you're going to get to a realistic situation. And when it comes to, long-term things, as I've said, like when you get to be at mid-level or senior and so forth, I can promise you that the range of things usually goes up that you have to know. And if you want to work at the highest levels, where you're literally, you're dealing with the most complicated issues, then basically you have to be a person who basically knows everything about everything. That's not where you start out, but you very quickly get to realize that everything is connected, guys, and it's every company has a different composition of tools that they are using and requirements they're going to put on you. In one company you might be the worst software developer they've ever seen, because you can't deal with all the chaos and complexity that they have. In another one you might be the best one. It really depends on like how do they do work. There is no blueprint for how every company structures everything They most of the time have the same sort of general tools, but as I said, it's sort of like making food. The composition of ingredients is different. All the ingredients are there, but you put them together in different ways, and that is a very difficult thing for you to just study. It's not like a standard, like for some professions where you just take a course and then you're done. Now you're educated. It's much more difficult than that. Have a great day.